There is. God has called us to be pleasing to him. Growing is painful. I don't care who you are. Growing is painful. I remember when I was growing up and getting up every day, not having to worry about what I was going to eat, where I was going to stay, clothes I needed, things I needed to live. Those things were taken care of for me. And I started growing up, and I got to high school, and I couldn't wait for my 12th grade year. I will graduate. Now what comes with graduation, if you're not going to college, is a need to transition to taking care of your. Now you go from everything being taken care of to having to take care of everything. And I remember I got these little jobs, and every now and then I pick up a paycheck with $14 on the paycheck. Did y'all hear me? $14. And then I got another little job, and I loved the job because it just required me to drive around and take produce from one place to another. And one day the man had me to do something I didn't know was included in my job. He said, we got some work in the freezer. Said, and we got some stuff you can put on to go in the freezer. And because I didn't want to embarrass my uncle, I didn't want to quit right then, I went on in the freezer. But the whole time I was in the freezer, I was thinking I'd rather hang out on the street and not have no place to live and no food to eat than to have to spend 8 hours in the. So I started learning that taking care of yourself ain't as easy and all that is cracked up to be. Life started to get a little tough, and so I decided that maybe I need to go in the army. I need to go somewhere. But I can't keep doing this kind of stuff. All of that was a part of my growing up experience. Spiritually, growing up means acknowledging that some stuff that we enjoy doing is not pleasing to the Lord. And I don't know about you, but everything that the Lord would have me to know is for my good. It's to help me to grow closer to him, to be more like him. Well, I've gotten used to doing what I want, when I want, how I want it. I came into this relationship trying to move the Lord to come my way instead of me growing to be more like him. You see, brothers and sisters, when we have to please God, it means sometimes we're not going to be pleased ourselves. And so what Paul was saying is God has given me authority to help you to grow in the grace and knowledge of Jesus Christ. The problem is that everything in me that I brought into the relationship is going to fight against everything you are teaching me to do. Guys came back and they gave the report. They even brought stuff from the land to prove that the land was flowing with milk and honey. But 10 of the 12 gave bad reports. Said we've gone throughout the land and we've seen some fortified places that we could never overtake. As a matter of fact, we saw a lot of funerals taking place. Now, what they didn't realize is that God was getting the land prepared for them. And all of those funerals were to rid the place of the occupants so that Israel could come in. They said, we saw a lot of funerals. It looks like a land that consumes its inhabitants. Said, and by the way, we saw some giants in the land. And when we saw the giants made us look like grasshoppers in our own sight. And so we forgot who brought us to the place. The giants we saw. We started seeing God through the giants rather than seeing the giants through our God. And so we look like grasshoppers in our own sight. And then they had a meeting, church meeting. Said, let's get together and we're going to stone them stupid two who went. And Moses. We're going to stone them, and we're going to find us some leaders who will take us back to Egypt. So now, if the leaders are going to take them where they want to go, who's leading? And so some things happen, and now God has declared that those folk 20 and older won't go enter into the promised land. They are going to the promised land, but they're not going to enter the promised land because of their rebellion. Well, as they got ready to do their journey in the wilderness, Korah broke bad. Go back to my scriptures. Korah broke bad. And go down to verses 2 and 3. And Korah, look at what it says. Him and his crew incited a rebellion against Moses. And they got about 250 other leaders in the community. You know, they were prominent folk in the assembly. Folk who had a name. Folk who called themselves the pillar of the community. Well, they all united against Moses and Aaron, but what they didn't understand is that in doing that, they were actually uniting against God. And Korah, you know how we do in church. The pastor ain't the only one God talking to. You know, the pastor just like us. The pastor makes mistakes too, and he human too, and he is. All those things are true. But in the church, you got to be careful how you approach your secular humanistic mentality. And so what happened is they told them, y'all done gone too far. I mean, everybody here is apart and been set apart by the Lord. He's with all of us. What right do you have to act like you the only one? Like somehow you greater than the rest of God's people. You see their perspective? Now, Moses never claimed to be greater than anybody. Moses just happened to be the person that God ordained, anointed, and appointed to lead the people. But Moses didn't claim any superiority to anybody. Their task was to follow Moses as Moses followed the Lord, and Moses' task was to lead them following the Lord to the promised land. Well, Korah challenged, and time won't permit me to go into all of the details, but Korah and all his group and his family and their families ended up dead. Dead because they rebelled against God, trying to act like they were rebelling against Moses. Now, why you say that, preacher? Well, you got to understand that when God anoints and appoints a leader, when you fight the leader, you're not fighting the leader. And God is not going to violate who he is. Even if you're right in the situation, God is not going to violate who he is to join your rebellion. If you're in a church where you can't get along with what's going on, find you a place where God would have you to worship and serve him without feeling like you are sitting in a bus and the driver don't know where he's going. I had a meeting some years ago, and a person was upset about some stuff that I'd said. And so I said, here's what I'll do for you. I'll let you have a meeting with my officers and me. And you can come in and state your case. And so when they came in and everybody sat down and court was about in session, and it was after Sunday, and I was feeling a little upset that I had to do it on a Sunday, but I wanted to get it done. And so I brought the person in, and all the officers sat there, and they were looking at him and all of that stuff. And I said to open up the meeting, I just want to say this. If God has called me to lead, understand this, if God has called me here to lead, what has God called everybody else here that he didn't call to lead? I said, so you can have the floor now. And he starts stumbling and fumbling and looking around and won't nobody with him, supporting him. Somebody had put that brother up to come in and voice the opposition of the quiet folk. And he was in there all by himself. And I wasn't upset with him. I understood, because I know how it is. I grew up around folk. You know, we say, man, if you get him, we got your back. We got you. We with you. And some stuff go down, and the person find out that we won't know where to be found, that he was on his, you know how people put you up to stuff. And I know Coral was meeting with all his folk, and they were carrying on and said, man, you ought to confront them. We with you. They made this mistake. Look at verses 12 through 18 real quick, and I'm going to let you go. But they made this mistake, and here's the mistake they made. In verse 12, Paul says, oh, don't worry. We wouldn't dare say that we are as wonderful as these other men who tell you how important they are. But they are only comparing themselves with each other, using themselves as the standard of measurement. How ignorant. You see what happens when you start comparing yourself with folk who are in the same predicament you in? Jesus Christ is the standard par excellence of everything we are about in the church. My standard should never be another pastor who may not be doing it like I'm doing it, but he's doing it the way the Lord has moved him or her to do it. I'm not the standard. Because folk don't do it like me, doesn't mean that God is not in it. Religious folk compare themselves to other folk. But we are not the standard. As a matter of fact, Paul says it's ignorant. He says we will not boast about things done outside our area of authority. We will boast only about what has happened within the boundaries of the work God has given us, which includes our working with you. We were the ones to come to you and lead you to Christ. God used us to bring you into the sheepfold. So we have God's authority to help you to grow in the grace and knowledge of Jesus Christ, to exercise spiritual leadership over you in order to help you grow in the grace and knowledge of Jesus Christ. But Paul is quick to point out it's not a one-way situation. I've always said that the greatest thing I can do is to get you to fall in love with Jesus. Because the more you fall in love with Jesus, the greater the blessings will be in my life. Did you hear that? See, I don't want to manipulate you into falling in love with me and then you get mad because I step on your feet one day and talk about how no good I am and I ain't all of that and so on, because you be telling the truth. I'm not. I'm not. I still wake up some days and say, God, I don't know how you let me sneak in. And you call me to be the spiritual leader over folk as jacked up as I am. I hate to tell you, I wish I were a perfect husband, a perfect father, and, just a perfect leader and all of those things. I marvel some days that God says, you know what, contract is over. You going on. I can't use you. But God over and over and over again allows me to represent him before his people. He's an awesome God. And it is not because any of us deserve. It's all because of what Jesus has